Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back. Dylan here with San Dimas Wine Shop and Tasting Room, and thanks again for tuning in one more time. I've got a very talented baker here who also happens to be a very frequent customer of the wine shop, and it's Beth Hassman, and she owns a business called Truly Scrumptious Cakes. And what she is going to be, what our theme for next week is going to be, is all about pairings with cupcakes. So we're going to be doing 3 pairings, we're going to be doing a total of 6 wines. So what I'll do is I'll go down the wines, and then Beth will talk about the appropriate cupcakes that go with those wines. All right, so let's talk about the floor. How are you, Beth?
Good. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about the floor. This is the Prosecco. This is a Mario Batali wine. This is something that, this is a project that he went in with one of his partners, I should say 2 of his partners, Joe and Lydia Bastanich. And what we've got here is a Prosecco that comes from Veneto, from the Veneto region, which is up in the northeast corner. And it comes from a little region, here it is right here, a little region called Valdebodini, which is just northwest of Venice. Real nice, bright, acidic. It's, like I said, it's Mario Batali's pour. It's citrusy. It's got this real creamy, moussey finish to it, and it also has this little toasted, nutty almond taste to it. But it's outstanding. I think this would be great for the cupcakes that she's going to be doing, as well as for the holidays. So this is the Flor Prosecco. Then we're going to be going on to the 2013, which is the Voodoo Cow. This here is 100% Chardonnay. It's done 8 months on Surly in a combination of French American oak, and it's also aged on oak. This really, I should mention, it comes from Mendocino. It comes from the Hopland Ranch. It's real. What I noticed about this wine is it's got a lot of tropical notes to it, in addition to some butterscotch. So they've been able to retain the acidity by putting it for a short amount of time on oak, as well as extracting a lot of those oak flavors that are going to go with the first cupcake that Beth is going to talk about. Tell us, Beth.
So the first cupcake for these 2 wines is going to be a walnut spice cupcake with a salted caramel buttercream. And the walnut spice cupcake, I actually take the walnuts and I ground them into a flour. So it's going to be almost half flour and half walnut flour. So that really gets the taste in there without being too chunky, but there is nuts. And then the salted caramel I make by hand. So it's cream, butter, sugar, cooked down with sea salt in it, which goes in the buttercream, and then I also stripe it in there in a swirl. So I think it would go really good with the nutty flavors that you did, and the buttery of the Chardonnay as well.
Yeah, with the creamy mousse here, and then also the nutty flavors there. We're going to move on to 2 Zinfandels. Thanks, Beth. We're going to talk about 2 Zinfandels. The Ironstone. This is their centennial. So this is a 2009. It's a 2009 vintage. It was planted in 1909. So this is 100% Zinfandel from Lodi, and it comes from the Roos Vineyard. Chuck Roos, I think is his name, who bought it in 1994. That's when he made it, Roos Vineyard. What's interesting about this vineyard, where it comes from, is when Chuck bought it, or I'm going to say Mr. Roos because I can't say for sure that his name is Chuck, his first name. But when he bought it, he was under contract to make white Zinfandel for 2 years on this vineyard. And these are these beautiful 100-year-old vines. So he was under contract to make white Zinfandel for 2 years. Once that contract was up, he decided, through some pruning techniques, he decided that he was going to make a real high-end Zinfandel. Now, these Zinfandels are what they call, it's called head trained, so it goes up into, it almost looks like, it looks like a bowl or head trained. In other words, it has no trellis to it. So because it doesn't have a trellis, they almost look like bush vines, which is oftentimes what they're called. So that's what this wine is all about. When you look at the stumps, they're real short and stumpy and gnarly, and then there's just fruit that hangs off the top of it. So that's the Ironstone. Then we go into the Zeneda, the 2012 Zeneda Zin. This is an estate Zinfandel from Paso Robles. It goes through a 20-day maceration period, which just means that's how long the skins are in contact with the wine. 18 months on a combination of French American oak, and it's real peppery, toasty, and it's got this really nice pomegranate finish to it. So, Beth, what are we going to pair with the two Zins?
So with the two Zins, we're going to do a classic red velvet with a cream cheese buttercream. And the red velvet is very interesting because it's made with buttermilk, so it kind of adds a little sour to it. And there's just a touch of cocoa, so it's not overly chocolate, but it has some chocolate undertones, which I think goes really good with the Zinfandel. And then the cream cheese frosting is nice, salty, and sweet, so I think it would be a very good pairing.
So let's talk about the last two wines, Carne Humana. This is a project from Chuck Wagner from Camus, which we also, by the way, happen to have the Skyhook here at the shop. And the Carne Humana, the Skyhook, and Camus, obviously we're Chuck Wagner fans. But he's the founder of this wine. This is a blend of Petit Syrah, Petit Verdot, and Zinfandel. It's a 2011. This comes from 6 vineyards throughout Napa Valley, which includes St. Helena, Rutherford, and I believe Calistoga. So I think what I especially appreciate about this wine is that it's done co-fermented, which means that the grapes were all put together first and then fermented, which is not typical. Typically what happens is when grapes are crushed and fermented, they're done separately and then blended at the end. I think it takes a little additional skill to know what those grapes are going to taste like before they're blended, and that's always the risk when you come across a co-fermented grape. So this here is co-fermented with all 3 grapes. What it does at that point is it does create a little bit more of an integrated taste, which I think you'll be able to try here, which you'll be able to taste here in the Carne Humana. Then we finish up with Robert Keenan's Napa Syrah. I love this. This comes from Coonsville, which is on the eastern part of Napa. 17 months on a combination of French American oak, real black cherry, smoky finish. The tannins are slightly grippy, but not over the top. And only 266 cases of this were made. So let's finish up with what it is you're going to be doing with this, with these 2 wines.
The last 2 wines, we're going to do a Mexican chocolate cupcake with a toasted meringue buttercream. And a Mexican chocolate, if you don't know the difference, is it has undertones of usually cinnamon, sometimes a little nutmeg in it as well. And it's just a little spicy with the dark chocolate. And then the toasted meringue is a traditional meringue, so it's toasted, which is kind of like a roasted marshmallow on top. So
sounds delicious. I can't wait. So let's talk about a couple of things that are coming up here at the shop. We have got, well, probably first and foremost in January, on January 5th, which falls on a Monday, due to popular demand, we've decided to move the first wine class over to January as opposed to doing it on December 15th, which was our original target date. Just because of the holidays and a lot of people that weren't going to be in town, we were asked by several people if we could push it back. So our first class, which is a total of 5 weeks, is going to start on January 5th, and we'll be starting with the Rhone region. Now, Bonnie and I, when we tasted for this, we've been tasting on these wines now for the French class. We've been tasting on them for probably close to 3 months. We tasted over 70 wines to get down to a total of 8. So you're going to find some great values. You're going to find some true elegance and true representations of what the Rhone region's about. So with that said, happy holidays. Beth, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate that. And we will see you soon. Enjoy the tasting this week. Cheers.